Good evening, everybody. Again, Chad Frost. I am a principal at Kent Frost Landscape Architecture here in town. I live in town and I work in town, and all of the employees that work for me live in town. So I am a resident, pay the taxes here residentially and business, but very happy when we can work in town as well. So we have been working on this, specifically Claude Chester, this property, for about the last year. Wanted to kind of bring everybody up, go over the quick agenda for tonight on where we've been, where we're going, and try to get some feedback. I'm going to try to stay on schedule because we have council coming up at 6:15, so we're going to 6:30, so we're going to try to be done and out of here by 6:15. I don't need this. Okay. All right. Again, so we're going to review the public process, the visioning process that we went through late last year. We're going to go through those results. I'm going to present the conceptual plans, so how we think we fit all of those amenities that the public were asking for onto the sites. We're going to go through project costs. Again, these are extremely preliminary, very high level, very beginning of the stage, but we want to put them out there so that you at least have an idea of what range we might be talking about. I've then got a worksheet that hopefully we still have enough copies. If we need more, we'll make them to kind of do some rankings and get some feedback that way. Then we'll do questions, and then at the end, hopefully we can end a little early, and we can have like an open house. We'll put up the plans around, and you can come up and ask questions and look at things closer than just seeing them on the screen. Sound good? Okay. All right, so this was the public visioning session. This was the flyer that went out that we held on June 6th over at Thrive 55. Again, had very good feedback that evening. This was the general property or the area that we talked about. So obviously Claude Chester, everybody knows, in the center, the library, Thrive 55, some town property up there, Pequannock Plains Park, Sutton Park, the community center and town hall. And then we were also told by the council to kind of evaluate if these private parcels that were for sale, if it was advantageous to buy them to fit everything that the public was asking for in. So we evaluated all those parcels. First thing was the program uses. So this is what are all the things that the public wants to be able to have out there. So we put it up on the Groton website and got a ton of feedback. So that's just a snapshot of everything that we got over the course of a month or so. And then the program items, this is what we presented again back in June of what the public said they wanted on this site, which was removal of the building, potentially a town green, athletic field, pedestrian connectivity, bicycle facilities, playground, event space, streetscapes, potentially using the building that's there for town offices, outdoor classroom, pavilion, shade structure, restrooms, community pool. Both, some people wanted just a small pool, some people wanted a very large pool with a lot of amenities, public art and placemaking, native plants, sustainable design, and public art. And then we had some more kind of get brought in. So if you were there, this was one of the exercises that we did, that we went through all of those amenities, and this is just one of the boards, but we kind of had the amenity, we had some examples of what those amenities might look like, and then everybody there had a sticker and they could go around and place it and vote, if you will, for what they wanted or not. And it's pretty easy to see some things like demo the building removal was a must-have, right? So most people there voted that the building needs to go away. Some things like the town green kind of had mixed results across, with probably the most in the indifferent, right? So that was one of the exercises we went through. We then did a budgeting tool. We kind of had fictitious numbers, but based on kind of some realistic scales, where we put all the program events out there and assigned a cost to them and gave everybody a budget of dollars they could spend and let them spend money and rank from a budget perspective. We did that individually, and then we also did that as a group. So we had people sitting at a table, and everybody at the table had to come to a consensus as to how to spend their money, because we all know that's a little different than how you might spend it personally. And then we did a kind of a tax, how much money would you be willing to have your taxes go up by for what size of project? And so we let everybody kind of go from $0 to $20, and we kind of estimated what that might mean on an annual basis and on a mill impact rate for 20 years, and let people vote. So the results of that, and I realize these are going to be difficult to read, but the colors are probably more important. What we did is we then ranked everything. So this was the must-have to the least desirable when you're ranking with the red dots. We did it both in person, so this is all the results from in person. This is the results from online, because then after we did the in-person one, we had it online for over a month and got quite a bit of feedback. And we ranked it both. This is by the must-haves, so like you can see the darkest color there, the pink, is the must-haves. This is the removal of the school, and it goes down. And then we ranked it both by must-have and would like, so you can see it reorders, it reshuffles things a little bit. I'll say at the top it was removal of the school, public restrooms, the pool, pedestrian connectivity, native plants, athletic fields, streetscape improvements, and at the very bottom was town offices, outdoor classroom, town green, public art. This was the online portion, so again ranked by must-haves, and this side's ranked by must-haves and would likes. What we found through all of that, both in person and online, we then tallied them together into this data. And what we found was that the groups were generally kind of consistent. So the top was still public restrooms, shade structure, school removal, pool, both major and minor, athletic fields, and the bottom was town offices, outdoor classroom, town green, public art, placemaking, things like that. So although they ranked slightly different and we evaluated them a couple different ways, by the end, you kind of had some things at the top floating to the top, although they might be shuffled slightly depending on which group we were asking, and kind of the same group shuffled towards the bottom. Then we did everything ranking by selection and dollars spent. The top one here is athletic fields was the highest rated that way. Then it was community pool major. I can barely see over there. The building removal, thank you, public restrooms, the pavilion, pedestrian connectivity, native plants, right? So again, this kind of reiterated what we saw in the first one, the same things kind of floating to the top and the same things floating to the bottom. And then the dollar question, right? How much money would you be willing to spend on a project like this? And so in this case, like I said, in the first one, we had a 0. You could spend 0. I don't want this at all. To 5 million, to 10 million, to 15 million, to 20 million. So this was the in-person meeting results. We had basically a quarter of the people that were there said, we don't want this project at all. But 75% said they want to spend somewhere between $5 and $20 million on a project like this, with 34% of the people in attendance saying they'd spend $20 million or more to get the recreational assets that they wanted at this site. Then we went to this is the online feedback. So kind of similar, we actually had a slightly less percentage of people saying they want 0, there's nothing to be spent. We had significantly more people kind of picking the middle of the road, the $10 million. And we had a little bit less picking the $20 million. But again, a significant amount of the population that went online and took the poll saying that they want to spend somewhere between that $5 and $20 million at a minimum for a project like this. We then combine it all together, both the online and the in-person, and we get a lovely graph that almost splits fairly evenly because this is a public process, and we do kind of expect that the more people you ask, the more things kind of tend to even out. Again, what I would say is what we look for when we do public input like this, if this was a project that the people really don't want, you would definitely see that number get skewed because people tend to come out and say what they don't want a lot more than they come out and say what they do want. But the fact that we had 22% of the total population that participated either online or in person saying no project, but then we had the rest of the population saying somewhere between that 5 and 20 million, with again a quarter of the people that participated saying it'd be 20 million or over. So when we kind of boil all that down, what we were kind of doing is saying, instead of saying we want A, B, and C, these things, we said we have high priority items that we've heard from the public, we have mid priority items, and then we have the lowest priority items. So we grouped them together in that way. So the high priority items, removal of the school, public restrooms, community pool, splash pad, athletic fields, the streetscape improvements, pavilion or shade structure, bike facilities, native plants, pedestrian connectivity. Those are our highest priority items. The mid ones, the playground, event space, and public art. And then the lowest priority was the town green, the outdoor classroom, and then town offices in the building. Yep. So we had some images of what that could be, but it's basically something large and artistic that is unique to this location that gives a sense of identity as you go through the space, right? So that there's a landmark, and you could think of it as the, I think one of the images we used was the Frog Bridge in Willimantic, something along those lines. So what we then had to do was figure out how to fit all those program amenities. Yep. Yep. Off the top of my head, I don't, it was several hundred is my short answer. Yes. Yeah, we had a very good turnout, I would say similar to this. You can only do it once. Yep. So we then have to take all those program items and figure out how we can fit them on this site or on the surrounding sites, which is what I'll show you next in the concept plans. What I wanted to also say is athletics fields through this whole thing was kind of grouped together. We knew there was a need for athletic fields. So what we were looking at is what the Athletic Field Task Force has proposed as a recommendation for Claude Chester was a 2 full-size multi-use fields and an intermediate-size field, which we like to call a 50-70 field. It's a Little League baseball field, and it's obviously between the littlest Little League field and a high school field. And I'll also point out that that was what was proposed for Claude Chester, which is why we're trying to incorporate that. But to meet the full needs of the town from an athletic fields perspective, there's the need for these fields at the high school, which is to renovate the current field, 2 practice fields, a softball field on campus, an additional 2 tennis courts, and to renovate the baseball field as needed at Fitch. And then at Sutton Park, a renovation to a full-size baseball and a full-size softball. And if all of those fields between Claude Chester, Fitch, and Sutton get built, we will then have enough fields in town to actually meet the current demand. So the task force wanted us to put that out there to remind them that Claude Chester isn't just the end, it's not just the full answer for athletic fields, it's one of the pieces. So now we have 3 basic concepts. All of them are very similar. There's not a huge amount of change between them, but there's the little points that we want to point out. There's kind of this enlarged plan looking at the whole area, and then we zoom in to just Claude Chester specifically on each. I'm going to go through the concepts first, and then the prices of those kind of second. So this is what we're calling concept plan 1. This puts 2 multi-use fields. I should just point out where we are, right? This is Claude Chester property, Pequannock Plains, library, town hall, and Thrive 55. So this puts 2 multi-use fields at the top end of Claude Chester. It puts the baseball intermediate field, the 50-70 field, in that corner. Enough parking to serve all 3 fields in use at the same time. We have a central drop-off area, safe for kids to be dropped off and picked up as other activities are going on around the perimeter. We have a shade pavilion kind of event area that could take place in the center. We have the amenities necessary for the fields, so backstop fences, scoreboards, bleacher locations. We have a bathroom and maintenance building off to the side, a playground up to the corner. The walkway continues from Pequannock Plains Park up and all the way around and back again. And we have new streetscape along the whole frontage of the road with a double alley of street trees, a nice walk down the center, parallel parking both to increase parking and slow down traffic on the road, and a wider shoulder. And then we have a boulevard entrance coming in right here at the current driveway into the school site. And then we have the existing entrance in Pequannock Plains, and then an updated parking area for all of Pequannock Plains, because if anybody's been out there when there's multiple events going on, you know that there's nowhere near enough parking. So this basically doubles the amount of parking to get it up to where it should be. Then in the back behind the playground, we have a structure that's half maintenance and half public pavilion, which kind of wraps up everything there. You'll notice the one thing we don't have there is aquatics, right? The pool, that community pool, the splash pad. And it's simply because we can't fit that with the amount of space everything else takes up here and the parking that we need. So our recommendation is down here in the town hall complex, there's a wing down here that's called D wing that's scheduled for demolition anyways. It's not being utilized. We demo that wing build an aquatic center down there that could have a pool inside of it. This is a 8-lane, 50 or 25-yard pool with a therapy pool alongside of it, and then the splash pad to the south of it, and a new parking lot that serves the expanded use of the building. Some nice things, obviously, is this aquatic center could be smaller when it's in that location and attached to the community center, because you can share some of the office space, you can share some of the utilities and some of the other amenities of the building. You don't need to duplicate those in a totally new structure. And by putting the splash pad adjacent to the aquatic center, all the pumps and filters and things like that can be housed in one building in that location. So I'll just zoom in. The next one, again, is zooming in just to Claude Chester, just so you can see a little bit more detail. Again, athletic fields, the ball field, the central kind of pedestrian spine through this covered shade structure, and the parking throughout. Yeah. 25 yard pool, yes. All high school swims a 25-yard pool. It was going to go to meters at one point way back in the past. They did not go to meters. They all swim yards and 25 at this point. Yep. Olympic does 50, but around here there isn't any 50-yard pools. 8 lanes. Yep. This is just like a shade structure. This building could potentially have food services. You can see this is the current one down at Paquonic Plains that has food, restrooms, and maintenance. So it's very comparable size. It'd just be a question that we'd have to kind of go through to figure out if we really need food service in both places. Because I know football uses the food service down there, but most of the other events that use the fields don't, and they kind of bring in food trucks or other things. So that's another discussion. We put in a building that can house it if we need it. All right, so that's concept 1. Concept 2, I'm going to say everything stays the same except the splash pad. We've moved the splash pad from down here at the community center to up here behind the playground and beside the playground, if you will, at Paquonic Plains Park. So I'm going to just zoom right in so you can see that. So we know how much use the Tercentennial Playground gets. Our feeling is behind the community center, it's not exactly all that visible. It's not on the beaten path necessarily unless you're going to Bluff Point. And that this might be a good location, central location. It would get a ton of use. And so that's where, one option was to move it here. When we do that, we need to add a building that can house the pumps and things like that we need, the filter, in order to be able to put that in there. It's a good option. Use-wise, they're very compatible. The only thing that we have a slight concern with, I would say, is wet kids playing in the splash pad going straight across onto the playground with the rubber surface. It can be a little bit slippery, and you've got sand over there. We don't want that tracking back and forth. It's a great idea from all the kids will be there and be able to kind of use it, but we would have to worry about how we control it and maybe fence it so that we don't have too much overlap between the two. Yep. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, this large, big green thing in the middle that I failed to talk about, that's the really high piece of ledge. So it's like 30 feet high. Level here, level all through here, very large piece of ledge. We did look at it. I'd be very honest with you. We looked at if we annihilated it, can we fit in another field? Does the parking flow better? It's a very expensive thing to remove it, but it's a lot of gravel that we could use for something. So we looked at it. In the end, we decided it wasn't worth the expense. We couldn't gain a whole other field. We didn't need that much room for parking. It wouldn't really work for aquatics. So the recommendation was just to leave that giant piece of ledge mostly untouched. Yeah. Yeah, so we had like a larger maintenance building here and a public pavilion. We end up with a small public pavilion. We need the bathrooms and the pumps and things like that. but it's really maintenance that loses that building. And then we pull this up here so these uses kind of happen together. And we know that Public Works or Park and Rec is definitely stressed with how much space they have for maintenance equipment out here, right? And if we had more fields, we definitely need to have more space to be able to house the goals and the materials for striping and all that sort of stuff that they have to have out there from a maintenance perspective. So that's what we potentially lose. Yep. At this point, we were just documenting the uses that we needed to have and be able to say, we know we need this building. And that we wanted this to kind of be, probably wants to be a freestanding shade structure, just like we have currently in the middle of the playground, so that parents and everybody can kind of sit under it and still see kids. Whereas this has to have bathrooms and pumps and showers and things that are required by the public health code for the splash pad. All right, and then option 3, again, it's going to look fairly similar, the same multi-use fields here, same parking lot, same central core. The big change now is aquatics. So we've moved all the aquatics from down here at the community center. We've put the 50-70 field down here where it can fit. And then we've moved the aquatics up to here and made it's a larger building now because it's going to have, all of the amenities and office space and things like that you don't get from a shared use down by the community center. But it becomes kind of a place-making building along the roadway that you could end up with a really nice aquatic center with glass that's visible and the pool is visible inside, outside. Again, same pool, therapy pools, slightly bigger building than what we had when we were down here. Not big enough to be considered really like a community center. There's no gyms in it. There's no significant classroom space. It's just really an aquatic center. Indoor. So all of them are indoor pools at all the aquatic centers, so they're always covered and usable year-round. Graphically, it's hard to tell that a little bit, but that's a great question. So then we've aquatic center, indoor pool, and therapy areas, and then we have an enlarged splash pad right outside, again, so that it's highly visible. There would be some fencing and some separation and things like that. But it makes it, the experience of coming down the street and seeing all of those public amenities, I think would be pretty great. And then it ties in well with this central area. You could have a secondary splash pad associated with that area if so desired. And then we maintain that building over here for maintenance as well as some public pavilion aspects. And then the 50-70 field comes down here with the parking to serve it. So that's our 3 plans. That's the zoom in. I should have clicked a little sooner. Probably what people care about the most, or I shouldn't say the most, but a big part of it is what's this going to cost. So we've broken it all down. We can go through each little number, but basically at Pequannock Plains, by the time you do the parking, is about 1.6 million. The new maintenance building and public pavilion is about 1.3. Claude Chester, so that's about 3.25 million at Pequannock Plains. Claude Chester, by the time you do the multi-use field, the 50-70 field, and all the amenities is another 10 million. The town hall, if we did the smaller aquatic center and the splash pad and all that, for this is concept 1, right? So our total there is about 22 million. For this whole project. If you were to do that in a single 1-year deal, right, and this is some fictitious numbers that are based in reality, but it's just to give you an idea. It's on 2022 mill rates and the 22 budget, right? But if you were to try to absorb 22 million in 1 year, that's basically a 15.9%, single bump in taxes. If you're the average house in Groton, which is $300,000, that pays them about $7,800 in taxes, your taxes would go up in that one single year by about $1,200. If we put that out over 20 years, which is how most projects are funded, and we bonded it, that'd be about $77 a year for the average taxpayer. Yeah. You're going to go crazy on numbers. Yeah.
Initial bill, what about the maintenance?
Yeah. So this is an initial project. We don't even know necessarily what's really in the buildings, what the operation costs are yet. Really, that's the next step, right? If we want to go there, what we're trying to look for tonight is this what the public wants on the property? And then we go to do the study on what is the aquatic center, because it needs to figure out, an architect needs to design what it is, how much it might cost, how you would operate it, how much revenue you'd bring back in, and all that sort of stuff. So we're not going there with this. This is just trying to get us that high level potential cost, at this point in the game. I would be extremely shocked if it was double, but that's a whole other topic that we can get into. Yeah. All right. So that was option 1. Option 2, again, so this just relocates the splash pad from down here to up here. We remove the building. This ends up being slightly less expensive because the building is more expensive per square foot than the splash pad. So we're at 20.9. So again, on a 20-year bond, that's about $74 a year to the average taxpayer. And then option 3, the aquatic center here is obviously more expensive. It's a much bigger building. The aquatic center comes in at about $23 million. Again, a lot of questions to be figured out as to all the amenities within it, but we know what size of building we need at a minimum and how much space that is in an average square foot cost. So all in, this project would be roughly about a $40 million project. And again, if you bonded that out, it's about a 1.75% increase over a 20-year bond at $137 a year to the average taxpayer. Yes. That would be the goal, absolutely. Yep. Well, and we do that both for men and for women. Correct. Yeah. And then Park and Rec rents it above and beyond that. So we calculated, and it's about at least $100,000 a year the town's paying right now, every year, to use Avery Point Pool, and they don't own it, and they still have to staff it with lifeguards and everything else while they're using it. So that is a cost that we're already incurring from a maintenance perspective. That ideally goes away in the future, but great point. I'm seeing a couple. Yep. Nope. We didn't factor in any revenue. We didn't factor in any savings of what we're currently spending. This is just a real high-level gut check of where we might be with a construction project of this value. So high school, right now yeah. Yep. So there's 2 other pools in the region that have, are kind of a community pool and high school pool. That's Waterford and East Lyme. They both run tremendous community water activities through the pools and host the high school at the same time, and it all works out great. The one thing that we would be proposing here that they don't have is that therapy pool or secondary backup pool. So you could still have swimming classes going on. You could still have some rehab going on. You could do other programs even while there might be a swim meet or swim practice going on. Yeah. Yes. Not a separate well necessarily. Again, questions that, details and things like that really need to be part of the next step. And really where we're trying to get today is, are we interested do we want the town council to continue going down this process? And the next step of that process would be an architect to do that type of work. Yep. Oh, sure. Yes. We are going to do question and answer. Good idea. Good idea. So, yep. So what I can do, why don't you help me pass these down?
Yeah, so at the end, we'll have a little bit of a question and answer, and we want people to be heard, or we'll just have to repeat questions we're recording this so people can watch this later.
All right, so we've got questionnaires. I'm just passing out questions.
All right, he's got questionnaires. And Mark's got some pens. We got pens. Okay. There you go. Take one, pass them down. Here, Chad, I'll pass those out. You keep talking.
Thank you. I need one sheet. Can I grab one from you?
Absolutely.
I've got one cheater for you. Are we almost there? If we have any extras, wave them about because we need to get some on this side. We're almost there. I need a couple over here, a couple there, a couple on that back wall. Yeah. Yeah. All right, anybody else that needs one, raise your hand, jump around. So I'll run through this real quick. Like to do it in the next 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll do questions after that. So at the first part of it, of the concepts presented, how would you prefer the town to proceed? So this is just kind of a very simple voting, right? Option 1, which was all the fields at Claude Chester, the aquatics at the community center, and then the Pequannock Plains improvement. Option 2 was the fields at Claude Chester, the minor pool at the community center, splash pad at Pequannock Plains. Option 3 was this final one here with aquatic center and all the multi-use fields at Claude Chester with the Pequannock Plains improvements, and the intermediate field, this 50-70 field at the community center. Option 4 is do nothing, right? But acknowledge that we're going to continue to pay to maintain the abandoned buildings and the grounds. And that just needs to be part of the discussion, that doing nothing is a decision to do something. And then option 5, if you don't like any of those options and you think we should consider something else, please write it down. I don't have one of all three, but on the back side you'll get that. The numbers are on the back. So if you need numbers to help make the decision of the first question, the numbers are on the back. Are there amenities that you would like to be removed from your preferred concept? Right, so if up above you said, I really like number 3, right, which has this one right here, it's the aquatic center. I really like number 3, but I don't want the parking, right? I don't think that'd be a very good idea, but if that's what you want, right, this is your chance to be able to say, I like 3, but I don't want the parking, or I like 2, but I only want 1 multi-use field and not 2 multi-use fields. So if you wanted any adjustments to the concept that you know, if you're picking between the 3 and you say, I really like this one, but I really prefer a little tweak to it, that's where we'd like you to fill it in. If you think it's great, then that's fantastic. Yep, question?
Yeah, are you looking for fundraise for this?
Yep, that'll be a whole nother topic. Yep. Yep.
to provide equivalent facilities to the option 3 aquatic center?
So the question is, does the aquatic center in 1 and 2
No,
equal?
1 and 3.
Well, 3 is the big one.
3 is a bigger aquatic center?
Is a bigger aquatic center.
That's what
because
I'm
it's standalone. So 1 and 2 are effectively the same aquatic center. It's a smaller structure because it's associated with the community center and we get some shared space there. The pool itself, right now, for all intents and purposes, is the same size pool.
The pool
It's
is.
in a smaller, cheaper building,
Okay.
right? Maybe a Butler building, a metal building, things like that. So it's a utilitarian structure. Whereas the pool in option 3 is in a bigger building. It needs the office space. It's a nicer building because of its location.
But the option 1 pool could still be used for the high school swimming, for instance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Hold on. We're gonna get a microphone.
Yeah, you said in the introduction, you mentioned other parcels.
Yep.
The Groton Family Farm and then the other property behind the library. And then that didn't show up in the options.
Correct. Yep. When we looked at all the program items desired, we can fit what the public has asked for at this point on publicly owned land. We don't need to acquire additional land for these amenities.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Good question, though. All right, so I'm going to keep going through this list so we can get it answered and then do all those questions at the end, and then also let you come up and look at them in person and ask questions in person. So the next one down is, are there amenities you would like added to the concept or concepts, right? So we've asked for a lot of public input. We've asked for what those program items are. We've got a lot of feedback through online and in person. If you weren't able to attend all those or didn't know about them, now's an opportunity to be able to put down on here what other things you think we've missed, right? The one I saw online today from the last couple of weeks was pickleball, right? We have some pickleball courts currently at the community center. Nobody asked for that during the first round, but it came out of, the online stuff for the last week. So pickleball, if that's important to you. The next question, should the town phase this project, yes or no? And again, this is a very high level, just theoretical question, but if for some reason you really like, I'm going to say option 3 because it's the most expensive, but you really would like to spread it out more than the $40 million bonded over 20 years, and you want to do it in 2 pieces, this would be your option. Yes or no, should we phase it? I think some people feel very strongly both ways, so that's why we're looking for that input. And if you do think it should be phased, we're asking for, do you want phase 1, 2, 3? What do you think that should be? If you wanted, say, option 3, but you want to phase the pool in, you can put pool. Or if you want to say phase 1, 20 million, and phase 2, 20 million, you can do that. So we're just looking for a rough idea if you think it should be phased or if you don't think it should be phased. As we flip it over, then again, here's those numbers that were on each of them. So how important is this project and how much are you willing to increase your taxes in order to support it? So again, that first option is 0, with 2 options then to say it's not important to me, I don't want to spend any money on it, or it is important to me, but we can't afford higher taxes. Then the second one down is concept number 1, which is the $22 million, and you can see there, we've been providing the kind of option all along of you could do a single year increase and what that would do to your taxes, or you could bond it over 20 years. So that's why we kind of gave those options. So 1 is the 22 million, 2 is the 21 million, and 3 is the 40 million. And then the town does think that there's a pretty good chance that portions of this project could be funded by grants. And so do you think the town should pursue grants to fund this project? And again, I think that's kind of a silly question to ask. But you would be surprised if you're really adamant that you don't want this project, you wouldn't want the town pursuing any grants to go after furthering this project. So we asked the question just to make sure, as town staff starts pursuing grants, if that's what you want them to do, that we understand that. And then the last at the very bottom is just additional feedback. So again, I will be here for the next, I'm going to say half hour. We have the room. Then we need to kind of kick everybody out. So I'm happy to take everybody's feedback, both in a group like this and then up here, kind of breakout open house. But if you want to make sure we definitely get it and it's noted down, please write down your feedback on the bottom so we can make sure we get it recorded.
And then for those that aren't aware, our webpage that we've been doing not only outreach and input on projects like this, but other projects, whether it's Mystic Parking, short-term rentals, you name it, we've been trying to do it on Greater Groton. So whether it's just for everybody in the room here, if you haven't visited that site, please check it out. And then people that are watching this later online, greatergroton.com. There's a lot of good information out there on a number of different topics, but all of the same questions that we have posted that have been given out to everyone tonight will be posted up on Greater Groton probably for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then once we're done with that, we'll compile all this data, go back to the town council and give kind of a roundup of where we are on things.
So that's the website of this particular project on Greater Groton is greatergroton.com/visiting-Claude-Chester. And so with that, maybe we can do kind of group questions for the next 5-10 minutes. And we'll try to get a mic to you so that everybody that's listening to the recording can hear it. And then we'll break up and do the open house following that.
Yeah,
Nice.
and if anybody that came in late, if you didn't sign in, please do so.
Sign in.
Sound like a broken record on that, but sign in. We'll get you on an email list, so any updates on this project, you can get them in the future. Thanks.
So for the plans for the, man, I am way too loud for this. For the plans for the fields, are they going to be normal grass, or are they going to be AstroTurf or synthetic?
Excellent question. The answer at this point is could be either, right? So
Either?
there's right now Park and Recs has money to do that detailed study. They can't do that study until we can tell them how many fields are going to be designing on this property.
Understood.
So right now, the size, what I should note is the size of the fields we're showing, those multi-use fields, can accommodate full-size soccer, and that's the largest field there is, so everything underneath it, football, lacrosse, everything fits within that field size.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Chad, I'm going to hand.
perfect.
So I've heard you mention the high school when it came to planning for the athletic fields. My question is, was there any consideration for the 250 kids that will be displaced from Claude Chester as part of the Groton Mystic Falcons, where they're going to be able to be accommodated somewhere else for their practices, which is like 3-4 months of the year?
We hope that this is their home turf, right? If this goes forward, 1, 2, or 3 has the 2 full-size multi-use fields, which is actually more field space than is currently available at Claude Chester. So this would be open to Groton, Mystic football, the lacrosse, the soccer. Everybody would get those access to those 2 fields.
And Pequannock Plains will remain the same?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
The whole idea being that we could potentially use all 5 of those fields as like a tournament event. Yep. So not displacing football at all is the hope. Yeah, good. Oh, right here.
When you were designing the plans, where did the idea come from on the types of fields to put in there?
Types of fields.
Did that come from Parks and Rec? In other words, you have 2 multi-use big fields and you have
Yep.
baseball fields.
Yep. So that was primarily, it's based on the long history that we have doing fields for Groton. And then the Athletics Fields Task Force, when the list that I put up at the beginning saying where they want fields and where, in order to meet the current demand,
So it's
they had identified 2 multi-use fields, and the 50-70 field could go in this location to help solve the overall needs in town. So that's why we
So it's
started with
Parks and
those.
Rec.
Yep.
When people ask questions, can they please put the mic close to their mouth so we can
Okay.
actually hear the questions? Because otherwise,
that-
we can hear them in the room, we can't hear them when they're taping. So although you think it doesn't pick you up if it's just a few inches away, you really got to put it close by. Thanks.
Hey, good evening. I was curious if there was a hypothetical timeline for any of these phases or field development.
How about tomorrow?
I mean, I'm in. Yeah. No,
Uh,
but I know it's hypothetical, but have you guys discussed how many years this would take to potentially
Well,
use?
good loaded question. I would say we need the council to be able to, decide this is what the public has wanted and provide direction. And then there needs to be probably a bond or something like that put out. That's probably a year process. Design is probably 6 months to a year, depending on if those overlap. And then construction is probably another 6 months to a year. So it's not going to happen for next season. But ideally, the quicker we can get some big decisions made, then the quicker we can be building whatever it is the public wants. Yep.
Hello. Hi. I guess my question is, of all three concepts, is there a second phase or another concept coming? Because I don't see enough fields in any of these concepts.
Good point. There isn't enough fields for all of the town needs, right? This is what we can solve in this location with this property. And so it would still be the recommendation that Sutton Park still needs to get the 2 fields in order to serve the needs there. And the high school needs the improvements to baseball, a new softball, and new multi-use fields up there as well. So all those fields need to be done in addition to these to meet the current need.
The hard part is, though, with the town and the school fields kind of conflict. So that still doesn't solve the problem completely.
The way that we've done the full assessment of when fields are used and how many kids and what the rotation can be, if we, as a town, we can build all those fields, we should meet the need, unless between now and then there's a massive spike of some use of some sport. You know,
So your data is from when? Because
our data was last updated in I believe it was 21, if not early 22. So we had data before COVID, and then we've had the data a little bit post COVID, which we know is.
because it's tough to grow the numbers without the fields.
I agree. Can we, the mic?
You know, and also I think to Chad's point, can you still hear me? Okay. This is us looking at this property in particular, trying to figure out the best use for this property. There are other properties, other studies that Parks and Rec is going to look at, but it's kind of one of those, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time? This is the first bite. We got to figure this out before. And then this is going to inform a larger study, which Parks and Rec will start soon once this process is done, looking at all of the fields within the town. So there was a hand over here.
Well, that has to be online.
For recording.
I don't want to hold it. Okay. The community center, which used to be Fitch Middle School.
Yep.
They just redid all that. What is that for?
So
What
that's
is that going to be used for?
that is an improvement for a multi-use athletic field. It's not as large as some of these, so it's not a full-size field, but it's what could fit on that
In the
site.
back too, as well? Same thing?
That, the renovations that we made to that field does not increase field capacity in the town. All that does is make a field that was not very playable. So we haven't picked up, you know, it's not like, oh, now they have an extra field at the community center. No, that field always existed, but it
Right.
was in very poor shape.
Okay.
Now it's in such a condition that athletes can safely play on that. Plans are, there's an additional field out back. Plans are to also make the same type renovations to that field, put in irrigation so that we can have a field that athletes can safely play on.
And so if we did something like that, would we still need the 2 fields that are over there?
Yes, because again, we're not picking up new fields. All we're doing is taking a field that's in poor condition and raising up the condition of it. That doesn't give us an extra field.
Right.
It just makes it a safe field to play on.
Thank you.
Yep, right here.
So obviously, the pools will be used year-round, but in the case of the fields, do you anticipate greater usage of those fields in the off-seasons as well?
Well, they would definitely be able to be used more often. So what we do find is Pequannock Plains is clearly the best fields that we have in town. They're still about 25 years old. They've been maintained amazingly to stay in this good a condition. But they still have to be closed because they're natural grass when it rains. And so depending on the field type that these 2 fields go in at would depend on how much playability they get. I would say that as Groton Mystic football would probably attest to, the current fields at Claude Chester are horrible and probably shouldn't be being played on in the condition they're in, but it's the only field that we have to be able to use.
Yeah, in the town I came from, they had synthetic fields.
Yep.
And those things were used year-round.
They are used year-round, yeah. And we've done some of those for some colleges, and they plow snow off of them so they can continue to use them all winter. Not that that's what this is going to be, but a new field will definitely increase the opportunities and extend the shoulder seasons a lot more.
someone kind of asked us a little earlier, but can you maybe give us a little bit of numbers on pool maintenance? You know, you've done other towns. Is it 10K, 200K? And the second part is, what other towns that have put pools in that didn't have them? Are they free to the community, or what is the average cost maybe to a household or a person that would go use it after it's built? Can you give maybe 2 rough figures for people's reference on those?
Nope, not at all. I'm serious though, but that's really the next piece that needs to be done. So we need to have an aquatic center study. If the public decides that yes, we're considering spending $20 million ish on this, then you need to design how big of a building, what needs to be in it, what are the maintenance costs on it, and what are the operational costs. So the short answer is I can't throw out a number of what it might cost to maintain. It is different all over, just like fields is different from town to town. And it's definitely premature to try to say what the fees may or may not be. They might be free, or it might be, a membership fee. It's too early, but all of that needs to be assessed by an architect, and that's really the next step to do. So I'm sorry, that's a non-answer, but that's the best I can do.
And also, just to kind of further build upon that, it's not that tonight we get input from people that, yes, we want a pool, or no, we don't want a pool. If people say, yes, conceptually we want a pool, then that study happens. That study then informs the maintenance, the operating, what the cost would be, and we'd start getting a better idea of, right now Chad has some estimates of what a pool would cost. That would really narrow it down. So then, all right, community, is this what you want us to do? Now we'd start moving towards that bonding. So today is step 1 of a multi-step process.
Yep, good point.
Hi, Mike Doyle. Does the pool complex include a therapy pool?
Yes.
And so so I found on the website, Southington was replacing their outdoor pool in 2012. There's a feasibility study, and it talks about revenues and how fees they would charge. That's probably a bigger area, but it could be scaled. So just for an idea, it'll tell you what pool,
yep,
what your study costs. I have to find that again because I can't find it right now. I'll get it to the town so they can see that. And the other thing, listening to town council meetings, this is one project. The Board of Ed currently has a CIP project in for $17 million, which they said field house. I don't know if that means football stadium and the stands as well. Nobody gave me an answer on that when I asked what went into the $17 million. If that's just the building, it's probably a good building. But so that's one. And so to decide what town council wants to do, they need to see all these numbers, and the whole town needs to see what the whole total cost is. And last I knew, at the Sutton Park 10 years ago, that was $4 million for the 3 fields. I'm not sure what that probably scaling to 2. That's still $4 million at least. So it'd be good to know what the Board of Ed or what the town needs for the football complex and what needs to be done at the high school. That costs as well. So,
yep. So
one thing is I think we should cost out all these things, find out what they cost, and so we can make a decision later on. We've been talking about a pool for a long time, so we should know what it's going to cost to make a real one.
Yep. So excellent point, because that's the next step. So there's already funding. Funding's been in place for 2 years. 2 years to do that full study for athletic fields between Claude Chester, Sutton Park, and the high school, and figure out what that total package cost is going to be. I don't know what Board of Ed CIP is. I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to what that 17 million is. But the funding's in place to do that big study. What we needed was the council needed to have some assurance that the public actually wanted fields on this property, right? And that they didn't want to be 2 years ago or so, there was a big push for a town green, and don't put fields, just put town green, right? So we've gone through this process specifically for this property to be able to say, what is it the public really wants, so that we can then provide that direction to Mark when he goes out to the RFP for designers to design all 3 of those complexes, and then we'll have the total number for fields in town. So, yep.
Hi, my name is Frank Narowski. I'm actually the chairman of the Athletic Fields Task Force. Been intimately involved the last 3 years. This is absolutely tremendous. What everybody's here tonight actually seeing, at least part 1 or one section of what we've been trying to do for the last 3 years is a great step. And to answer some questions that, just from my knowledge and being on the committee, like the field portion of it, Does it solve every problem? Probably not. But what you're looking at today, I don't want to tell you how old I am, it's okay, but I played on that field in 1978, and I think it was built in 1960, and it's exactly the same. As a town, this is really a no-brainer. I mean, if you go to other places and you see what our athletes are using, and it's not just the athletes. I mean, our task force spoke to little leagues and soccer and the band, and I mean, the band is New England rated. They're amazing. They've been asked to host New England regionals or something, and they can't because we don't have a field that is worth poop. So, and yes, and it'll come down to dollars and cents and the synthetic square versus a rectangle versus grass. Obviously, we all know synthetic. You can use it sunrise, sunset, lights. You know, a lot of what we did in the last 3 years is on their website. It's on the Groton Rec website. If you go look at it, it's a little detailed at times. It gets a little sketchy and it's deep, but I think you get the general idea. You take a multi-use field, put it at the high school, put a new track around it, make Mr. Costa happy. It's a whole new world up there. I mean, you'll have people that field is so beautiful up there, and it's the least used field in our town because no one can use it. So, I mean, let's think about, and never mind compliances for ADA, let's not, that field, that complex was built at the high school when females didn't have teams. There were none. So think about it. It's just, so all of your support is great, and I'm just tickled that we're to this point. So thanks very much.
Am I next?
Yep.
Hi. Chad, you mentioned tennis courts, and I don't see them there. Did I miss something?
No, tennis courts, they needed 2 more tennis courts at the high school. So that was my, the high school has, I believe it's 6 if I remember right, but there was a need for 2 more up there in order to host what they normally.
So they'll be built at the high school?
Well, that's the recommendation at this point, yes.
And
Not part of what we're looking at for Claude Chester, but yes.
is there any plan in all of this for outdoor pickleball courts?
Well, I would say, right now, on Claude Chester, we don't have them drawn in, but if that's something you want, definitely put that down on the paper so we can see if we can fit it in.
Okay. And then the other thing I didn't see addressed here, I think when I came here, I had this idea that you were going to put up a building and it would have classrooms for fitness classes and such. So I'm not seeing that. Is there a plan at Fitch Middle to do any renovation? Like, for example, my yoga classes in the former Fitch Library. It's a makeshift space at best. Is there any plan to sort of update those things so that we're not just kind of, in a partially made over space and not really a dedicated space?
I'm going to let Mark answer that one.
So there are plans to make minor renovations. We have to work within the building that we were given. The Board of Ed said, this really doesn't meet our needs anymore. Well, let's give it to Parks and Rec. And, and we're working with that, and we're doing the best that we can with it. But major renovations, no. We do have some plans to make changes, but nothing really substantial at this point, despite the fact that we'd like to.
Yeah.
But
I would put in there maybe as a comment, as a write-in, if that's something you want more, classroom space, definitely put that in there to see if we can fit it at either option of whatever you chose. If it was aquatic center down at the community center or the aquatic center at Claude Chester. We had some more space in there at the Claude Chester site, but not for a lot of classrooms. We weren't trying to make it a community center. If you really think it should be, definitely note that down so we can take count of that.
All right. Hello, Pat Core.
Yep.
So I see you talking about fields that are in the use for maintenance. So was there any talks about an indoor field for year-round use?
No.
Oh.
Oh, Yes, Councilor.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to notate that in the town council meeting that we recently had, we allocated some ARPA funds, and we're having a final vote tonight on it, actually. But there was money put aside for pickleball courts over at the community center to have them outside there, and as well as some other items to upgrade, which was the rink over by the senior center, to upgrade that and put lights on that. So we allocated some funds for that as well. So pickleball is on our radar, and we put some funds towards it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh,
Hi, I just wanted to speak, as a citizen as well. As you know, I am also a counselor. But, some of the concerns and questions of people that couldn't come tonight that had approached me, after our town council meeting. And I also did serve on the athletic task force. And for full transparency, the Board of Ed did not have a plan in place to do anything with our athletic fields. And a bunch of volunteers got together and came to the council and said, we need to do something. So that's how that got started. The concerns that I somewhat have and the concerns that some other folks have is, this is wonderful, and I'm all in support of doing something with Claude Chester and keeping it in the town, but this will not address the needs at the Fitch High School, and I just want to make sure that is clear. The football field and the other concerns up there, we're still not in ABA compliance. When I go to marching band, as it was stated, wheelchairs are able to get up onto the stands with their family. So this is great, but it will not address. It will not address the Fitch Middle debacle that was, renovated partially, but not fully. So some have reached out to me, and I won't say their names because I don't have it in front of me, but basically that we're planning this whole new development, but we're doing, really nothing with the high school and nothing with Fitch Middle. And we've been, so it's important to know, when I was on the athletic task force, I was in support of improvements, but I was first and foremost thought our athletes at the high school level going off to college should be at a competitive level first. So making sure those are addressed. So that I feel is the first priority. And then we should be moving to what our long-term plan is for Claude Chester, obviously not getting rid of the property, not saying fields shouldn't go there. But I do believe the high school issue, I graduated in '98, and I'm up there, it's the same green paint, it's the same bleachers, it's the bathrooms are not handicap accessible in a great way for people to get in. It's kind of embarrassing. So this will not address that to make us competitive with our New London County and our broader region ECC. Ledyard's updated, New London's updated, Stonington's updated. We are an outlier. This will be beautiful down the road, but it's not going to fix the problem at the high school or, as it was stated, the Fitch Middle School. And those are kind of things that I'm really concerned about. I think it's important to support our Little League and our athletics that are secondary, but the high school first and foremost should be on our list as a priority as we're funding education, and athletes should be funded at a full level, especially female athletes. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Any other comments? Otherwise, what I would say, if we have none, we probably have about 7-8 minutes left before we need to start clearing out. So I can turn off the mic and you can come up and look at the plans, and we can ask some questions quickly for the next 7 or 8 minutes, and then
and hand in your sheets.
And hand in your sheets. So
thank you
either
very much for
bring them up
coming.
here or put them back there at the sign-in table. And thank you very much for coming. And it will be available online as well.
Also, there is a town council meeting right after this. If anyone wants to speak at public comment to let the council know how you feel on things.